Okay, so this is a quick video on how to make the prop swords for the outside assignments that we're doing this fall. You can use your hands, of course, to do all those assignments with just tagging. You don't need these props, but it's a lot more fun if you have them. So the simplest way is to use a fun noodle. This is a fun noodle. You can get them at, like, for for swimming and that kind of stuff. But you find them all over. You cut it in half. You'll get like 2 of them, and then you and your sibling or your parent or whoever else you're playing with can use these to tag each other. So that's the simplest way if you don't want to spend too much time doing this, making a prop. But if you want something a little more fun and dynamic, you can make an actual bamboo core sword. So that's what this video is about. Now I'll warn you in advance that making these weapons is noisy. I have to tear tape. I have to move things around. So if you're listening to this on headphones and you don't want to hear loud noises, you want to turn it down a little bit, and then that way you won't get the sound of tape and stuff, because in order to make these you have to make some noise with duct tape. So what you'll need is a piece of bamboo, about 2 feet. 3 feet is fine too, but you'll use up more bamboo. And you also use more pipe insulation, so be prepared for that. It's a little harder. I would suggest 2 feet to start. You'll need a good duct tape. I use the IPG Fix-It grade, but you can use whatever you want. If you have Gorilla Tape, it's great, but you don't need it. We're going to skip it for this particular lesson. All right, so here's your piece of bamboo. The first step is to cover these ends, and this is where it gets noisy. So here's my duct tape. I'm going to take my duct tape, and I take a little piece, take these little sections, and I'm going to take these little small pieces and just cover the ends. All I'm doing is keeping it from splintering and keeping the ends from breaking apart. And so that's really the important part. I don't want to get any splinters while I'm working. Bamboo is really strong and flexible, but it does splinter, so you need to cover those tips so they don't scratch you. The next step is to take your piece of pipe insulation. Here's a piece. You're looking for something with like a 5/8 inch internal diameter, and a 3/8 inch wall. You're looking for something really small. This pretty much the smallest you can find in a hardware store. You're going to get a small little section of it, right here, really quick, just a little ring like. You're going to cut some sections of that ring out. So I'm going to cut it, just some small pieces. There we go. And we're going to take these little pieces and we're going to tape them onto the ends of this piece of bamboo. So I'll take my tape. There we go. Take a little tear plate. You can use scissors with duct tape, but it really will mess up your scissors. It's very sticky. So that's why I recommend using your hands instead. But people do use scissors. You can take some double-sided tape and put it on the end. To get a piece of double-sided tape, you can take the tape and just roll it kind of around into a loop so that it's sticky on both ends, and then you can stick it onto the end. Now this is just to hold these pieces in place. That's not gonna be enough to keep them there. You're definitely need to wrap around the side. So once you've got it sticking in place, you're gonna take this tape and go around it like this, making sure that you're touching both the foam and the bamboo. Now, if I was using, if I have Gorilla Tape, you could use Gorilla Tape for this. But since I'm assuming you don't at home, just have maybe 1 roll of duct tape. I'm going to teach you this way. So just do 2 layers if you don't have any Gorilla Tape, and go around twice. This is just to make sure that the end, if your sword like tears apart or breaks on you, that nobody gets really injured. They'll just get hit by this and they'll be fine. So here's the other side. Now I'm going to put tape around this side, taping it on like that and going around like that. So now you can see I've taped it around, but that's not enough. I need a little bit more. If you're using Gorilla Tape, 1 time would be enough, but not without Gorilla Tape. So I'm doing 2 times now. Okay, so there's my tips. It's little squishy safety tips, we call them, just to make sure that my pipe insulation doesn't break and then it hurts somebody. So now I'm going to build the sword. Now you'll see sometimes videos of people making swords with pipe insulation, and they put the bamboo inside the pipe insulation like this. Now you can do that. There's swords that people make that do that, but I find the problem with it is that it's not soft enough for the type of swords that I would like you to use. I would like a much safer, softer sword. So I'm going to teach you to make a sword that's a little bit softer and I would say safer. This does work, but you have to tape it in a correct way, and you have to tape it onto there or it'll wiggle and twist, and it can be problematic. And I make a lot of my weapons that way, but not this one. So what you're first going to do is find this little line that goes along the end here. There's a line on the pipe insulation usually, and that's going to be your guide. You're going to set the bamboo on that line, and you're going to leave a bit of it sticking off. This is going to be the handle of the sword, so make sure it's not too small for you. You want a decently sized handle there. and this is going to be the blade of the sword. So you're making sort of like a wakizashi or a short sword. So you want to make sure this is enough blade. Once you've got it lined up there and you know right kind of where you want it, you can set it down. Take a piece of tape, kind of a longish one, like that, and you're going to line it up again right on that line with enough handle. Make sure you got enough handle, and then you're going to tape around. First I tape it onto the bamboo, and then I go around like this, and I tape it on like that, really snug. Next, and I'm going to do that 3 times, going up the pipe insulation like this. Here's another piece I'm doing, taping it around, and I go around. Make sure not to pull too tight that you're going to like deform it or make it kind of looks, you know, you want to keep your pipe insulation looking smooth. And then one more piece right up at the very top. I'm going to put a piece right up here at the very end, right up here. Now, make sure you're still in line with that line that I was telling you about on the pipe insulation. That'll make it a lot easier, and it'll keep it from being all twisted. So it should be straight. If you're looking at it, you should be able to see all the way down that like that. Okay, so now last, you're going to put a piece of tape over this whole end right here. And this is pretty noisy, so I'm going to do this kind of away from the mic. There we go. So you take a long piece like that, and you put it right over here, and here's the piece like that, and you put it up like that, and it just kind of covers the bamboo. That way also if the bamboo breaks, you don't get any splinters or anything that would be problematic. All right, so there's the back of this. Now, this is the tricky part. You're going to fold this back on itself so that now the pipe insulation is going backwards. It's folded at the tip like that. There's a little space at the end, and it goes backwards like that. And this is actually going to cover the bamboo. And so what I do is I take the end here. There's my end, and I'm going to cut it off once I'm sure that I've got the right amount. And if you're not sure, cut a little extra. It's always better to have a little too much that left over than to cut it too short and then have to redo the whole sword. So there's my cut on my sword there, and I'm then going to take this split on the end here. There's a split. I'm going to open up that split all the way up, almost to the top, like that. And then what that's for is I'm going to actually open up this piece of pipe insulation, and this bamboo is going to go inside of it, like that. So now is when the bamboo goes inside, not before, like I was showing you before. This design means that you end up with a much softer blade if you do this design, the design I'm making right now. And I've been making these swords for 2 decades, I think. This is a sword design, and possibly more actually now that I think about it. And it works really well. It's just not as decorative looking as some of the other swords you'll see out there, so that's why we don't use it as much. So here's the sword, what it's looking like now is pipe insulation like that, and you want to make sure it's really snugly covering all the bamboo. All right, so now I'm going to get this upright and then start at the tip here. I'm going to take this duct tape, pull a nice long piece there, and I'm going to make sure this covers over all the way my bamboo so I can't feel or see any bamboo. And then I'm going to wrap around it here. Now don't put too much on, or else you'll just end up making your weapon really hard and tough. You really don't want that. So then again, I'm going to do it again. Another long piece at about the middle, right there. And then I'm going to do one more at the base, right down here. Okay. And make sure you're not pulling it too tight again. You don't want it to be all deformed and twisted. All right, so once that's done, now I'm going to put some tape on the sides here and here to keep this piece of bamboo from pulling away from the pipe insulation and then maybe injuring somebody. Again, this is loud, so I'm going to do pull this piece of tape far away from the mic, but it's a long piece. So, and I put it right along the side of the sword like this. Like that. It helps to keep the sword in one shape and keeps it from deforming as you use it a lot. Okay. So there we go. There's another piece on the side. So now we're almost done. There's your sword. You can see the blade is all together. This one side that sticks out is the blade side, and then this is the back over here. So now the handle. The handle is done completely differently than the blade. You actually want to pull really tight for a handle, and you may have to cut a little bit out of the handle because it might be too wide for your hand. Some people like to take a little bit of this pipe insulation out and cut it out to make it a little smaller, so they can, when they cinch it down, it's not quite as bulky on their hand. So there's the handle. I take some tape, and for this step, I'm actually using something that we called locking down. So the first step is to take the tape like this and put it in sideways, and then push it in and make sure it touches the bamboo. So you see it's touching the bamboo, and then it's going to go around like this. And I usually, the only time you ever do this with making swords is when you're trying to squish something and make it really tight. Very rarely would I do this on a sword for a blade or anything. You would never want to do that. You'll just crush the blade. But when a handle, you really want the handle to be pretty tight. So I do wrap around the handles pretty tight like this, because you also don't hit anybody with a handle. So that's really not the goal here. The goal is to make it stay attached and to give yourself lots of control. So here's the end. Again, I'm putting the tape in there, and then I'm wrapping around. And that's pretty much it for the sword. The only step left is to make sure this pommel is safe in case you're going to use knockout in the game. I usually just take a quick piece of tape, put a piece of tape over it to keep it together, and then I take the last little bit of my pipe insulation. I cut a ring really quick out of there, and then I take that ring and I use it as the pommel. I stick it on the end like that, and that's really easy to do. You just take a piece of tape like this, put your ring on the top like that, and then take your pipe insulation and set it, make sure it's really clear there, and put your duct tape on the side, and then you can put it like that. It makes a nice soft bouncy knockout, and then you're going to go around it just to make sure it doesn't come apart as you use it a lot to knock out. Now, some people like to decorate their handle. The handle, you can, if you have another color of duct tape, like a brown or something, you can take that and then put it along the blade, the edge of this handle rather, and that way it'll keep your, it'll make it clearer where you hold it. So especially if you're playing with like your parents or with a sibling who doesn't know the game very well, they can tell better where to hold it. It'll make more sense to them when they're playing with you. And since you're going to be playing at home, it's helpful to let them know how to use the device that you've created and use it correctly. All right, so that's it. As you can tell, this took about 10 minutes to do. And now I know what I'm doing and I have all the tools ready, so it probably would take you longer, especially on your first try. Don't expect your first try to work out really well. They don't. You may have to try a couple times, but this isn't very expensive. These cost like maybe $1.50 or $2 for this pipe insulation, and a roll of duct tape is like maybe $4, $5, but I didn't even use the whole roll, just barely. So you should be able to get lots of swords. The bamboo also not too expensive. You should be able to get that at a hardware store. Now these are really safe swords, super safe, so safe that it feels like being hit with like a balloon. It's so soft that if your siblings or your family members are concerned about, how soft is this weapon, let them try it out, and you'll see that it's very, very soft if you've made it correctly. If it hurts in any way, you didn't do it right. There's definitely a step that needs to be done. Now make sure that you can see here that this pipe insulation here, this is the blade you strike with, and the reason I put it on the outside was to make it extra soft. This is like a huge compression device, and it keeps it very, very safe so that you can't really hurt anybody. If you do happen to hit with the back, that could be a problem. But even this design, the back is still super soft. So really, it's really hard to get injured. All right, that's the sword. If you make it right, you can use these at home. If you want to do some other swords, you can look at some other videos that are online. They'll show you how to make the more complicated, camping mat foam swords that look like this. They look much more like a real sword. They take a lot more skill to make, but they're really cool looking. You could make these at home. And then, of course, if you want to get into other videos, you can even get into the more, very complex, like wakizashi katana styles, or the really detailed type of swords. There's lots of different swords that can be made. So you can make all kinds. You can work on them, customize them, make them your own. But that's what this video is about. Hope it was helpful.